How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today is Sunday, which means that it's time for me to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel on Nintendo Switch. Make sure I'm selecting load here. I want to load into wherever we are. So, this game has me very intrigued, because we left off last time remembering when Takako disappeared. She has yet to disappear, and we've been psyched out so many times, I'm on the edge of my seat now, wondering when's she going to disappear? Where is she off to? Where is she going? Now, I will say this. I did spoil myself a tiny bit. I looked into it online just to find out, is Takako real? Yes, she's real. She is actually a real person. This isn't some sort of figment of Sachi's imagination. We could say that for sure. I could not be happier. After looking around the Grand Cathedral and enjoying the nighttime streets for a while, we returned to the hotel. I drifted off to sleep pretty much the moment I climbed into bed and ended up having a surprisingly vivid dream. A blonde girl in linen clothes was collecting flowers in her basket, standing in the field that would later become the market square. It all kind of reflected what Takako said back there. I continued observing her, being seemingly transparent myself. As I approached the girl to get a better look at the contents of her basket, she abruptly looked me straight in the eye, even though she wasn't supposed to see me. In that moment, the flower field disappeared as though swept away by a hurricane, turning into a field for executions. A man adamant to preach a philosophy that contradicted the tenets of local doctrine was seized by the Inquisition and burned at the stake for refusing to renounce his beliefs. I felt as though his panicked eyes had been glaring at me through the flames. The next day, I told Takako about my dream as we moved south on the high-speed railway. She said her dream had aliens instead. She then started describing their countless characteristics and proceeded to never shut up about it. Never changed, Takako. The light from outside made my eyelids flutter open. You awake? Yeah. I pulled Takako's jacket closer to my chest. She must have placed it on me while I slept. Aww. Takako, sitting next to me, was gazing at the clouds beyond the window. A massive mountain range stretched below them. We're almost home. What time is it? As Takako was looking for the clock, the plane's speakers turned on, making an announcement in English. Takako finally pulled the clock out of her pouch. 8-ish. Have you already set it to Japanese time? Of course. I shifted my weight under the jacket and leaned against Takako's shoulder. I'll take another nap, so wake me up when we're about to land. So they're flying back to Japan from, I guess, from Rome. Takako reassured me that she would. The last thing I saw before drifting off to sleep was the plane ticket in her hand. Nagasaki welcomed me back with a steaming cup of coffee. Thanks. Rising from the sofa, I took the cup from her hand. Are you feeling okay? I'm fine. The smell of coffee dispelled the final remnants of my drowsy mood. It made the memories I experienced under hypnosis feel like a distant dream. Takako didn't go missing during our trip to Italy. I recounted the events I experienced under the effects of hypnosis. Nagasaki nodded. And it seems like that trip occurred before Inukai joined your company. How do you know? I confirmed the date on the ticket with you. Oh, you can do that? I told you before the procedure, but your subconscious memories usually remain in your head a lot clearer than the ones you're conscious of. If I direct your consciousness properly during the hypnosis, I can learn details you would normally never remember under usual circumstances. I wonder if there's any truth to that. Not a fan of hypnosis myself, but hey, it's a game. Nagasaki flipped a few pages of the medical record in her hands, then pulled out a piece of paper stuck between them. For starters, we learned that there is, after all, no proof of Takako working at the company after Inukai was hired. Well, I was the only one saying that anyway. Nagasaki drew a line on the paper. Now, there's nothing contradicting Inukai's statement. I suppose so. Nagasaki crossed out the part on the timeline where I said Takako had disappeared. But now we've got another problem. When did Takako really disappear? Why did Takako really disappear? And why did I think I kept traveling with her even after Inukai joined the company? Exactly. I took another sip of hot coffee. The coffee Nagasaki made was always incredibly bitter. When did Takako really disappear, and why did I think I kept traveling with her even after Inukai joined the company? I repeated the question within my still bitter mind. Why the sour face? Nagasaki smiled. It's the coffee. Let's call it a day. Nagasaki continued as I remained silent. It's my job to think, and you've already used your head quite a bit today. Leave the rest to me and go take a break. Raising my face, I saw that Nagasaki wasn't planning to give me any more questions for the time being. All right. I wonder if Takako disappeared after Inukai joined the company, but maybe she quit the company and still traveled with Sachi after that. I gave her a reluctant reply. Don't worry, we're getting closer to the truth. It does seem that way. As I fell silent, Nagasaki made a troubled face and turned to her desk. She then said she would give me some nutrients against exhaustion just to be on the safe side. After that, she began filling out the prescription paper. As I absent-mindedly gazed at her do her work, I spotted a piece of string peeking from her pocket. It was the same string she used to hang the 5-yen coin earlier. It was my first time, but hypnosis sure is incredible, isn't it? I had specific clues for the scenery and date this time around, so guiding you to those memories wasn't all that difficult. What do you do when you have no clues? Nothing. It'd be equivalent to trying to look for a book whose title you don't even know in a massive library. Here you go. She handed me the prescription paper. As I asked her about the medicine, she explained that those were just nutrients to compensate for the exhaustion the procedure might have caused me. Gotta go get some vitamin D. I entered the drugstore to see a family sitting on the bench, most likely waiting for the medicine to be prepared. I passed by the benches and handed the prescription slip to the clerk. Thank you. The female clerk unfolded the paper and gave it a closer look. Do you have any allergies? No. Do you have any questions about how to use the medicine? No. I will call you when your medicine is ready. Feel free to sit down while you wait. The clerk rose from her seat and disappeared beyond the glass door further behind the counter. I sat down on one of the benches and placed my handbag next to me. The rays of the warm afternoon sun fell on my legs through the drugstore window. The line between shadow and light quivered around the area of my knees. I moved slightly toward the shadowy area. As the bell rang, a man entered the store with a prescription slip in hand, prompting the woman I just spoke with to return to the counter. I could see 2 people in white coats walking back and forth between the shelves further beyond the counter. Miss Kasahara? Miss Kasahara Mitsuko! The female clerk called out a name in an emotionless state. The mother of the family sitting at the bench put her newspaper down and walked over to the counter. I was about to pull a paper back from the handbag I had left at my side, but I changed my mind, stopping my hand midway. I stood up and continued to the medicine corner, examining the various labels. For medicinal bath, compresses, nutrients. I was looking through the merchandise, trailing my finger along the labels as I read them. Brown rice, mixed grain, glutinous rice. They actually had a 1 kilogram pack of glutinous rice here. Glutinous rice? Miss Sachiko. Having found what I was looking for, I continued to the counter. Glutinous rice. A kilo of it. Can you imagine? I caught a taxi as I left the drugstore and told the driver the address of my office. It didn't even take 10 minutes to reach my destination. Can I have the receipt, please? After fiddling around with the taximeter, the driver printed out the receipt. I took it from his gloved hand, and after paying the fare, stepped out of the car. Again, gonna screw up the voices. I'm back. Sorry for taking so long. I opened the office doors to see Inukai working at his desk. Hello? Inukai gave me a glance. How's the revision going? No issues so far. I glanced at Fumi sitting next to him. What is up with her? She looks like she's laser focused. She seemed to be really into her work, almost leaning over the desk with her fingers practically on fire as she typed. Her mouth also kept moving ever so slightly, almost like that of a hungry fish. I listened to what she was mumbling to herself. I wonder if it'd be better if I aligned the text to the right here. But the colors of the background and the letters overlap there, making them too hard to read. I suppose I could lower the saturation of the background. It's like she's in a trance. Inukai adjusted his glasses. Who do you think she's talking to? It's not the first time this happens. Considering the way she talks at times like this, I believe she's discussing matters with those sheep sitting on her desk. Inukai directed his emotionless gaze at Fumi. With the sheep? I glanced at her desk, realizing that all the sheep, from the one on the shelf wearing a tuxedo to all the normal ones around her monitor, were aligned in a way that made it seem like they were observing her work. Aww. I believe she goes over the entire process one more time, summarizing the important points by making presentations to them. Then, to avoid too much subjectivity influencing her work, she asks the sheep for opinions, improving her designs according to their feedback. I see. Fumi is prone to making careless mistakes, but she's about 30% more effective in that trance-like state of hers. I see. This has been one complicated project, so I can't blame her for becoming like this. Fumi's hand suddenly froze in place as her eyes darted to Inukai. Her posture remained completely unchanged. Inukai, I need to discuss something after I'm done with this. After that, she returned her eyes to the monitor and resumed work. But again, it's pretty incredible she's able to do that much in such a short time span. With those words, Inukai picked up his teacup and cleared its contents with a single gulp. Where's this American that's coming to intern with them? I wonder what the meaning is of the name SeaBed, too. At first I thought it was because they both loved the ocean, Sachi and Takako, but now I wonder. On the weekend, I spent most of the afternoon finishing up my laundry. My workload had halved compared to how things used to be, so I could now use the extra space on the veranda to hang the futon as well. Hang the futon? What did it ever do to you? As I began dusting it off, I heard the exact same sound of someone hammering on their futon in the distance. The middle-aged forecaster on TV claimed the weather would remain clear until tomorrow night. As I finished hanging my laundry, I moved to the kitchen and began preparing today's lunch. I hadn't been to the supermarket lately, so all I had in the fridge was Chinese cabbage, some poultry, and onions. I'd bought a 1/4 cup of the cabbage, and by now only about a third of that was still left. With no eggs left, I had to give up on making oyakodon. I splashed some water and oil into the frying pan, followed by a few pieces of cabbage, onion, and poultry. As the onions began to lose their shape, I added some leftover udon I found in the freezer. I made lunch from throwing random things together, but it turned out better than expected. I ate it while watching TV. Man, VNs and their food, yo. On my way to do some shopping, I dropped by the library to return the books I borrowed. It was a municipally owned establishment, but probably because of the location, there was barely anyone inside, despite it being the weekend. Back in the countryside where I grew up, all the libraries would be filled with school children on days like this, to the point where you had to really struggle to find an empty seat. There seemed to be slightly more people around compared to my previous visit, but it was still nothing compared to what I'd been used to. On the right-hand side of the entrance, a separate space was set up for children. It had a small bookshelf lined with various picture books. They were the same fairy tales I used to read as a child. A story about a penguin traveling around the world on a patch of ice. Another story about a cat that loved quizzes. I moved to the left side of the entrance where a bunch of tables were lined up next to a set of large windows that made the spot ideal for reading. Not only were all the normal seats empty, there wasn't anyone using the lavish and comfortable-looking sofa either. We remember how much Sachi loved to get away and just read on nice days in middle school. A poster for the local neighborhood association decorated the side of one of the larger shelves, making it visible even from the reading room. As I wandered into the psychology section, I spotted the librarian who printed my card. I forget what voice I gave her. I made a bow, which, upon noticing me, she returned with a bow of her own. She seemed to be in the middle of arranging books, holding the map of the library in one hand. I was about to pass by her when she suddenly addressed me. "You're the same person I made that membership card for the other day, right? Did the books you borrowed prove to be of any help?" I didn't expect her to call out to me like that, but after a few moments of startled silence, I answered that they did. "To tell you the truth, most of the books from that section are a bit on the old side, but since someone finally borrowed some of them, I could use it as an excuse to order new editions." After placing the books she'd been holding back in their respective ledges, she pointed at the shelf where the volumes I borrowed were originally from. It did seem like there were a few more books there than before. Judging from the titles, they were mainly focused on hypnotic therapy and the workings of the brain. Saying that she thought I might be interested, the librarian gave me another bow and left. I spent a few minutes looking over those new books. However, no matter which one I checked, I wasn't able to focus on them. In the end, I left the library without borrowing anything. I ran into the librarian on my way back. As I made a curt bow, she once again returned it with her own. "If you ever need to look up anything else, don't hesitate to ask." And with that, we parted ways. I wonder what her significance is, because they gave her art. So that means at the very least she's going to be a recurring character that we'll see fairly often. I placed the toothbrush back into its cup, washing out the last remnants of toothpaste from my mouth with some ice-cold tap water. When I returned to the living room, the morning news was on. As I looked outside through the veranda, I saw large gray clouds blanketing the sky. I snagged a glass from the kitchen cupboard, filled it up with water, then used it to water the plants I kept outside. As it had been a while since it rained, the dry soil absorbed the water right away. "The search for the 2 missing Japanese citizens is still ongoing." Turning my attention to the TV, I noticed the news reporting on a boat accident that happened somewhere in the southern islands. Hope they find them. The announcer began describing the event in detail. I picked up the remote control from the table and changed the channel. After finding a channel with the weather forecast, I upped the volume. Cloudy with a chance of rain, or so they said. I pressed my train pass against the ticket gate, and once the machine successfully recognized it, descended the stairs to the train platform. Only a few people were there this early in the morning. It would be a while until the place began to really fill up with people to the point where they'd have to delay trains. That, by the way, was quite the common occurrence on Mondays. My train arrived as I was absent-mindedly gazing at the unchanging signboard. I claimed an empty seat near the edge of the car. With nothing else to do, I decided to look through the advertisements inside the train car. One ad posted on the wall advertised coffee, while the other one gave the details of some sort of anti-diarrhea medicine. Both were the same as last week. Next up were the posters hanging from the ceiling. I spotted one of the weekly magazines going on about recent news on politics as well as celebrity life. The 2 missing Japanese citizens I'd heard about on the news were mentioned, too. I hate Mondays. Same here. 2 young men in suits sitting a bit further away from me were having a conversation. I spent all weekend having some much-needed fun, and I still have a bunch of unfinished work left over from Friday. Feels like it's going to be ages until my next day off. The train slowly came to a halt, stopping at the station closest to my office. Even the neon lights beyond the window were starting to go out. It had been a while since I heard the last car go by. Any plans for your vacation? Fumi addressed me while I was typing out a report. Not much. I'll be going to my parents' house. Inukai joined the conversation. I wasn't asking you. Fumi spoke up in a cheeky tone as her fingers continued tapping away at the keyboard. I see. Inukai let out a faint snort and returned to his own work. I was planning to take a trip to the hot springs this year. Would you like to go together? A trip to the hot springs? I transferred the last report's data to the printer. Most of the documents from the mountain of papers on my desk were now fully checked, revised, and logged. I think we'll be able to start our vacation early if we continue at this pace. Are you sure that's okay? Inukai was seemingly startled by Fumi's question. Well, we've already cleared all our main goals for the end of the year. The rest depends on how soon you can finish the individual tasks you still have left. Awesome! Fumi briskly returned to work with a broad smile on her face. Inukai, too, began to type at a seemingly faster pace. Don't forget to submit the necessary documentation if you decide to make any changes to the date of your vacation. I heard a quick, course, and an understood in response. As I glanced at the monitor displaying everyone's vacation details, I suddenly realized that the document had an attendance record tab. I clicked on it. Finding the entry for Mizuno Sachiko, I scrolled down to the records dating back to around a year ago. The last trip I remembered taking seemed to be the one where I combined 3 holidays and 2 days of paid leave to be able to leave for a whole week. Interesting. About a year ago, say. But Inukai started working there 2 years ago. I clicked the send button on my email, finally transferred to the clients. Placing my hand on the back of my neck, I gave it a light crack. After that, I leaned against my chair with all my weight. I'll be going then. Inukai fixed his necktie and opened the door, his eyes almost completely drained of life. Thank you for your work today. Inukai nodded and left the room. The round clock on the wall indicated that it was around midnight. With Inukai gone, the office became emptier. The sound of the lightly pattering rain against the window felt louder than before. It had been continuously raining for the past few days, and even though it momentarily let up around noon earlier today, it resumed again as soon as evening came. I could see the raindrops outside, illuminated by the glow of the office. They came pouring down from the black skies above, only to melt into the darkness below. Fumi suddenly stood up from her chair, walked to the door, and turned to me.
I'll go grab a drink. Want me to bring you back something as well?
Just a coffee, please. After a nod, Fumi left the room and headed for the vending machine. Once I'd seen her off, I closed my eyes and began to stretch my muscles a bit. As I was swallowed by the darkness and my closed eyelids, I felt almost like the only thing that existed outside was the rain itself. At my side of the table, there was silver tableware and neatly folded napkin adorned with a checkered pattern just like yesterday.
Jeez!
Fumi returned to the office and violently pulled out one of her drawers.
What's wrong?
Takako, who sat in the seat right in front of her, observed the whole spectacle. Fumi placed a 100-yen coin on the desk.
It won't fit in the vending machine!
That happens sometimes, yeah. Takako stood up, picked up the coin from the desk, and gave it a closer look.
Oh, that's a pretty old coin. This guy's been around since before I was even born.
She shifted her gaze to Fumi.
Is that how you appreciate your whatever that is,
progenitors? Ignoring Takako, Fumi opened her purse.
It was already around before we existed, yet you denounce it just because it was already around before we existed, yet you denounce it just because it won't fit into one of your fancy vending machines?
I couldn't help but chuckle at Takako's characteristically random antics.
Something the matter?
Fumi gave me a glance. I blinked, and just like that, Takako, along with everything on her desk, as well as that ancient 100-yen coin, vanished without a trace.
It's nothing. Really? Well, here you go, then.
The canned coffee she handed me was the one I usually bought from our vending machine.
Thank you.
As I took it off her hands, Fumi walked to her locker and pulled out her jacket. I placed my finger on the still warm can's pull tab, but quickly changed my mind, choosing instead to put it away into my bag. My computer finished shutting down with a low whir.
You've already missed the last train. Want me to give you a lift?
Fumi turned to me after closing her locker.
No need. I'll call a cab home.
Just as I was about to stand up, a sudden onset of dizziness assaulted me. I leaned against my desk with both hands.
Something wrong? I'm just a little anemic.
Fumi considered me for a few moments with her hand on her locker's door before closing it.
I'm kind of worried, so I'd rather drive you myself. I'll go get the car from the parking lot, so come down in 2 or 3 minutes if you can.
She then left the office before I could say anything. Sitting back in my chair, I pressed my palms against my temples. I felt somewhat better afterwards. Then I opened my bag and took out the canned coffee from earlier. After locking the office door, I tossed the empty can into the trash bin next to our old vending machine. I left the building about 3 minutes after Fumi. After spotting a smallish car in front of the entrance, I climbed inside and sat down in the front seat.
Welcome.
I closed the door.
Thanks. No problem.
Fumi's car was a hatchback type that didn't separate the interior from the trunk, making it more spacious on the inside than one would think from a mere glance. Fumi leaned forward in her seat and began adjusting the position of the back mirror, sticking her lips out in a funny way.
Where did your glasses go? Don't worry, those are fake anyway.
Really? I fastened my seatbelt with a sharp click. As the car in the back mirror passed by, Fumi placed her right elbow on the doorknob on her side and stepped on the gas.
You don't need glasses? I'm wearing contacts, so it's okay. So, you wear fake glasses over your contacts? Yes, I wear fake glasses over my contacts. I had no idea.
I chuckled.
My sister gave me the frame as a birthday present, but it didn't have lenses. I mean, those things are really expensive, right? But you don't need to wear them just because of that.
Fumi tapped the storage compartment in front of me.
Makeup's less of a hassle this way. I see. I saw you wearing glasses when you read books. Are you farsighted or something? My eyes are fine. I wear the glasses so they don't get worse, actually.
It seemed like people wore glasses for all sorts of reasons. Fumi pressed the small lever to the left of the wheel. The wipers going up and down on the front window increased in speed.
It's raining pretty hard today. The forecast said it'd clear up by tomorrow, but I'm wondering if it really will.
The rain had been growing gradually stronger since we left the office. The water running down the windshield looked almost like a waterfall, with a new stream blocking our sight no matter how hard the wipers struggled. A ray of light suddenly pierced the sky.
Was that lightning?
The sound of thunder reached us around the same time Fumi said that.
Seems so. I suppose the rain won't be stopping anytime soon.
As I narrowed my eyes and peered into the darkened sky stretching above the few city lights that still endured, its canvas looked almost like a large, wriggling snake.
You look tired.
For a moment, I almost thought I was back in Narasaki's clinic, but it was just Fumi addressing me as I absent-mindedly gazed at the drifting clouds. In my mind's eye, I imagined the two standing next to each other and chuckled at the thought of how different they were.
Did I say something funny? I heard someone else say the same thing, that's all.
Smiling, Fumi responded with,
Well, it's the end of the year.
She seemed to have cheered up after hearing me chuckle, but we still couldn't find a common topic to discuss. The raindrops trickled down the windshield, following the exact same route every time, would all be swept away by the wiper.
I imagine we won't have to stay this late again anytime soon, at least as far as this year's concerned. Thank God for that. Yeah. You definitely pushed yourself too hard this year. What makes you say that? I saw you spacing out and talking to yourself a lot lately. I was getting a bit worried, to be honest. I was talking to myself?
Fumi nodded.
Well, you rarely actually spoke, but you seemed deep in thought all the time.
I tensed up, worried that she might have noticed my condition. But Fumi added,
I think you were talking about work or something. Happens to everyone. That's a bit shocking. I thought I was being careful not to let my exhaustion show.
Fumi smiled, her eyes still fixed on the road.
You're usually pretty difficult to read, so it'd actually make it easier for me if you were more open. I don't even remember the last time you took a vacation. Made me wonder if you actually take any time to rest. Though if you do that, Inukai will have less work than me. Just saying, she nodded. But I took a very long vacation a while back.
Fumi paused for a second, then went on with,
Well, that was quite a while back, wasn't it? I wonder if I took too many days off.
I tried to guide the conversation toward the subject I was most curious about. Fumi shook her head in response.
I think you needed them back then. Really?
I pressed further, noticing Fumi was hesitating.
It was around the time Miss Takako passed away.
Fumi's voice lowered to a whisper.
When Takako passed away? You don't normally show emotions, but back then everyone could tell you were trying to suppress more than was healthy. We couldn't do anything. I was so worried.
Takako's dead?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you through that.
I did everything I could to not show my bewilderment as Fumi shook her head.
But you returned to normal when you came back from that vacation. You even took care of all the accumulated paperwork at twice the pace. I couldn't spend the rest of my life moping around and crying.
Looking out the window, I spotted the closest convenience store to my house. I felt as though a snake had been wriggling inside my head. I could tell it was most likely my blood flow, but it was feeling so sick, I decided not to think too deeply about anything. When Takako passed away? Why would Nagasaki not know that? Why would Fumi know that? What happened? And is that true?
Thanks for the lift. No problem. See you tomorrow. Yeah, see you tomorrow.
I opened the car's door and rushed to the entrance of my apartment complex in the heavy downpour. I heard the sound of a car engine whirring to life behind me. Glancing backwards, I saw Fumi waving me goodbye as she stepped on the gas. Once her car had disappeared into the darkness, I boarded the elevator. I pressed my palm against my head. It hurt like hell. As I reached my floor, I took the key holder out of my pouch as I walked down the corridor, then opened my door. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. Upon entering the bedroom, I threw myself on the bed, not caring about my still wet clothes. I wasn't planning to get up anymore. I haphazardly pulled the sheet over myself and closed my eyes. Then I repeated the words one more time in my head. Takako's dead. I could hear the sound of the clock somewhere deep within the darkness. You can't just do that to me. That's weird. That font is different. I opened my eyes after experiencing a pleasant feeling of lightness, almost like I was floating in the wind. Within the deep darkness hovered a tiny flame, illuminating the cold, rock-laden ground below it. There was someone in front of me on the opposite side of the flame. I know you. We've met before. That's right. We met at the square. You were with your lover then. They were garbed in a robe with a long hood, preventing me from making out their face. Why are you in my dream? I don't know. It was as though my question had been swallowed by the darkness. Your mind seems to be in quite the state of chaos. Perhaps you are more confused than even you realize. Well, whatever you say, in any case, there was something I forgot to ask you last time. What's that? Why didn't you renounce your theory? Most likely because I thought preserving it held more value than the remainder of my life. Why? Life versus theory. Yes. What we recognize as life is but an accumulation of electrical signals. Our consciousness is merely the result of oscillating electrons. Once you die and that function fails, even that disappears. But the thoughts and ideas you put out there into the world, they remain. It might not be more than a tiny part of me, but a certain sequence of my individual oscillations resonates with and gets copied to other people. It is, of course, hardly anything special. Everyone's doing it. That's just the kind of animal we as a species are. For instance, singing songs of love, gazing at pictures of your homeland, reading letters, the feelings of the Creator are conveyed and thus find new life within the heart of the beholder. It's quite simple. I suppose that makes sense. Every word in our language comes from some individual sequence of oscillations, the original masters of which had long since been lost to time. A single word everyone uses now makes the feelings of those ancients reappear in the world. I feel that's a tad more significant than a few years of living. Like a bubble from the shrouded depths of the sea. Right. The bubbles meld together, change their shape, and form feelings even more complicated than the original. I imagine it as a sketch of a Persian rug that gets more and more complicated. That sounds like it. The people currently alive and the threads connecting the oscillation sequences into one giant rug of near infinite complexity. So all people, dead or alive, are part of that rug, are they not? Takako too? Yeah. What about you? I think so. You're a strange one. I could say the same about you. I wish we could have met while you were still alive, not in some dream. Indeed, this is a dream completely isolated from reality. You've come up with everything here on your own. Perhaps I have, but I'm extremely interested in what you're trying to achieve now. What are you talking about? The person fell silent. The gradually waning flame around us no longer reached their face. It seems like time's up. I slowly opened my heavy eyelids, waking up to a grating noise. Lub-dub. It sounded like something hitting a large drum. It was pitch dark around me. I couldn't see anything. I finally made out the vague cobalt-tinted light of my alarm clock with the one eye that wasn't blocked by my pillow and saw the numbers on its display. Lub-dub. The sound seemed to be coming from my chest. It was the beating of my heart. The blood vessels in close proximity to my ears were sending blood up into my head, contracting like a throat gulping down water. I squeezed my sheet and firmly closed my eyes. I must have woken up by a bad dream or something. As I continued to listen, the sound grew more and more unbearable. I heard someone clutch the sheets. I opened my eyes. I saw Takako's back. I reached out, but my eardrums almost exploded as my arm brushed against the sheet. Still enduring that terrifying sound, I finally managed to reach her back with my palm. Something wrong? As I was unable to force out a single word, Takako, with my hand still against her back, spoke up herself. Is it another one of those? Did you have a bad dream? I gently pulled on her pajamas. Takako slowly turned around to face me. After wrapping her arms around my tense shoulders, she held me tight to her chest. The sound, which at this point was beginning to sound like a battering ram against my eardrums, grew in intensity. The rustling of clothes, the compressor, each and every little sound in the vicinity assailed my ears like the boom of thunder. Lub-dub, lub-dub. The sound of running blood was the rumble trying to tear my nerves to shreds. Takako's hand touched my hair. She began stroking it. Her hand moved slowly, like a cloud in the sky, or a shadow upon the face of a sundial. All the terrible sounds melded into one agonizing cacophony were returning to normal one by one with each of her strokes. The fridge in the kitchen, the digital clock next to my pillow, the wind howling against the window, they became more and more distant. I'll be up until you fall asleep, so relax. Her whisper still sounded like an ear-piercing scream, but it no longer made me break out in a cold sweat. Feeling something warm against my eyelids, I opened my eyes. The bright light of morning found its way through a gap in my curtains. I traced a hand along my shoulder, finding the spot Takako was touching just moments before. I could feel warmth, the unmistakable trace of someone's touch. Looking at the bed after I'd climbed out of it, I noticed some wrinkles on the sheets, almost as though someone had really been lying next to me. I placed my hand on the wrinkled spot, finding it still warm. The door to my bedroom was left partially opened. A crow sounded a shriek, letting the slumbering city know that morning had come. I heard the sound normally. Raising my now functioning head, I left the room. I told Nagasaki what Fumi had told me, including the intense reading of my ears that followed. Nagasaki listened to me, nodding her head. It seemed almost like she wasn't surprised at all. Nagasaki left her pen on the desk and placed a hand on her chin. Can I bring you something to drink? Go ahead. Sorry about interrupting. She moved further into the room and came back holding 2 cups. I use this to keep myself awake, so it might be a tad too strong. Nagasaki placed one of the cups next to me. Thank you. I was about to take a sip, but the coffee was so hot it burned my lips. I used the silver spoon that Nagasaki handed me to stir the cup a little. How is it? After cooling down the coffee to a tolerable temperature, I took a very small sip, just to wet my lips, but still ended up wincing at the taste. It's bitter. I've heard that hard roasted coffee beans were supposed to not carbonize and retain their sweetness. And I've heard that light roasting actually makes it retain more caffeine, so it's more effective at waking you up. I'm not sure how it works with caffeine, to be honest, but the taste of this one is enough to drive sleep away from me. It's more of a mood thing. I took another sip, then left the cup on the desk. I understand what you mean. Nagasaki cleared her throat, drank up the last remnants of coffee from her cup in a single gulp, and left it at her desk. I could see black dregs trembling at the bottom of her cup. Managed to calm down a little? Yes. You don't feel sick or anything? I had a headache when I heard what Fumi had to say, but it's already passed. That terrible pain was gone by morning. Good. My head doesn't hurt, but I no longer understand what's going on with me. Nagasaki drummed her fingers against the desk. I urged her to answer faster. For one, we could tell that Takako has passed away. That's definitely true. I furrowed my brows. Do you have any proof? You've only forgotten about it. I've forgotten that too? Besides, I know how and when it happened. I see. In that case, can I remember it through hypnosis? Most likely. Nagasaki prepared the sofa we used last time and made me lie down. We don't need to go as deep into sleep as last time. Just relax and listen to my words. They're really going to kill Takako, aren't they? We're 4 streams in and they're about to kill the best girl. Rats. She told me to close my eyes and relax like the last time. Then she began talking in a slow voice. Try and recall that rainy day. We hadn't met in a while. Suddenly I could hear the sound of rain. There was a line of people dressed in black. I could smell the faint hint of incense through the rain. That looks real to me. It's been a while. I'm Nagasaki. Do you remember me? She handed me her business card. If you need help, you can always come to me. Wait, she did this whole time? Lady? Are you kidding me? She knew this whole time? That's just mean. And now I'm sad. Right. Now I remember. We hadn't spoken in a decade at that point. It seemed like you had already forgotten all about it when we chatted at the cafe, though. I was a little surprised when you just took my business card. I'm sorry about that. Don't be. I figured it was probably related to the reason why you'd want my help anyway. I could have told you everything, but I didn't want to force things when I didn't have all the answers. Apparently, Narasaki was planning to tell me about Takako's death after pinpointing the cause to my condition. I see. You probably already realized this much, but I imagine you forced yourself to forget about Takako in an attempt to cope with her loss. I was worried that making you remember would only upset your mental state, causing your hallucinations and ear ringings to grow worse. But your guess was off then. Understanding what Narasaki said, I took another look at myself. I wasn't exactly in pain, nor did I feel anything that could be described as severe anxiety, fear, or even stress. I'm glad I was wrong. Otherwise, we might have been in a pretty tough situation, with you learning the truth before I could explain anything. I was pretty confused when I learned about it, though. I think your headache was just an after effect of your memories returning. I heard the meow of the cat walking on the fence beyond the small window. Well, I'm glad I managed to straighten out some of my memories without any obvious repercussions. But this raises a couple new questions, just like that trip I saw during your hypnosis. You said that you thought I couldn't handle the shock of Takako's death and forgot all about it. Is that correct? Yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind, but it looks like I was wrong. Narasaki nodded. Let's fix these one by one. Narasaki picked up my medical record and opened up to the page with the diagram. First, you misremembered the dates of your trip and Takako's disappearance. This was done so you could treat your hallucinations as real things. On this account, I doubt we were mistaken. So, can we now consider this memory discrepancy problem solved? Yeah. Next, I thought that your hallucinations were the result of a deep psychological shock caused by Takako's death, but that was probably off the mark. So what we're left is the fact is that Takako is nowhere to be found, plus your symptoms. How did she die? Narasaki added to the diagram. I gave it another careful look. Wait, how do you know my hallucinations haven't also been cured? Didn't we just eliminate their cause? Narasaki paused for a few seconds. Your memory loss was just something to convince yourself that hallucinations you've been seeing in the office were real. And in regards to Takako, whether she disappeared or passed away, it doesn't change the fact that she's not with you. It's possible you might no longer see hallucinations in the office, but as long as you're alone, your situation hasn't changed much from before. Well, it's entirely possible your symptoms might have gotten lighter now that you remember the important things. This diagram doesn't show the cause of your hallucinations to begin with. I can't exactly declare you cured just yet. Everything has a meaning and a reason, huh? Exactly. Looking at the diagram, though, it didn't seem like we had much left to go on. It felt like all the possible causes had been ruled out, either by the examination or by the treatment I received. In any case, I suppose it'd be a good idea for me to keep coming here. Narasaki considered me for a few seconds before voicing her agreement. It seemed like she was busy thinking about something else. Is something bothering you? Yeah. For now, I have to keep observing you. As I said before, there's a possibility that your symptoms might have grown lighter with this. It'd be nice if that was the case. I looked at my watch while Narasaki placed her pen and medical record on the desk before shifting her attention to the calendar on the wall. On it, a red line crossed out all the days from the end of this week to the end of the next. You have a vacation coming up, right? Yes, that's right. Yesterday you worked late into the night, correct? I'm worried about your symptoms, but I'm just as concerned about your physical health. I highly recommend spending your vacation somewhere calm and relaxing. Do you have anything planned?
Not really. Any place you'd recommend?
Nagasaki lightly scratched her cheek.
I tend to spend most of my days off at home, so how about a hot spring? A hot spring? A coworker of mine actually invited me on a trip to one just the other day. I suppose my hometown is more famous for hot springs than anything around here. But if I went back there now, I'd be opening a whole new can of worms. I'm not saying it's necessary or anything, but perhaps it would be better for you to be with someone you know who knows you well. And if it's a calm place where you can relax, all the better. What about spending my vacation at home? There were some movies I wanted to watch. Maybe I could drop by the rental store on the way back.
Nagasaki slowly shook her head as if trying to look around the room while I browsed through various movie titles in my mind.
That sounds like a good way to relax, but I'd still recommend going outside. Would that be more effective?
Yeah. Do you remember the conditions for making your memories surface through hypnotic treatment?
Yes, I think it was information directly connected to said memories, like concrete sounds, situations, and dates.
That's right. You could say that in your head your memories are tagged or indexed in a particular way. I'm pretty sure you've experienced a certain kind of elation and a rush of memories when you were looking at a nostalgic site. And your room is packed with memories of Takako. Your environment is full of things that will remind you of her.
Things that will remind me of her.
I repeated her words.
If possible, I'd recommend picking somewhere you haven't been to before. Places with strong ties to Takako, like your office or your home, will definitely make you remember her. I think it will help for you to relax and reorganize your thoughts in a completely fresh environment. You may be right. If you do find someplace nice, be sure to tell me about it. All right.
Call up Fumi, hang out for a week. I went back home and finished the laundry. Then I scrubbed the bathroom and the wash basin until the sun set. After that, I cleaned the oil stains from the stove and the mold that had accumulated around the faucet. I also polished the sink until I could see my face reflected in it. Finally, I thought about how to spend my vacation. I couldn't think of a single acquaintance I wanted to spend time with in this condition. I watched the tap water hit the bottom of the freshly polished sink. With nothing else to do, I sort of spaced out for a while. I observed the translucent flow of water from the tap as it burst apart upon hitting the surface of the silver sink. The water kept swirling around as it traveled down the drainage. Having grown tired of watching that, I turned off the tap. After observing the last drops of water disappear from the sink, I removed my apron and hung it on the rack. I continued to the bathroom. After undressing, I began opening the door leading inside. The steam from the bathtub escaped through the slit. Once I'd confirmed that the temperature was just right, I climbed inside the tub, submerging myself in the water. I could feel my body warming up, along with the pleasantly light tingling of heat against my skin.
We could use this chance to go somewhere far.
I heard Takako speak. Hello. I opened my eyes to see her playing with a toy duck.
Somewhere far. That sounds nice, but I was told not to tire myself out too much.
I heard the phone ring as I left the bath. I wrapped a towel around myself and hurried to the living room.
Hello? Ah, finally! Hello, is this Miss Sachiko?
I heard a somewhat familiar voice from the other end of the receiver.
Yes? This is Fujisaka Nanai. I thought you wanted to visit us.
I remembered the woman who helped me look for Takako back in Italy. It's been a while. Um, what? You just called me the other day. Don't know who's talking. Did I? Guess you really did forget. Didn't you say you wanted to visit us during your next vacation? Nene's tone was colored by mild surprise. I did? Yes. Our inn isn't open to regular customers right now due to remodeling, so you were happy that you could have the whole place to yourself. Are you sure you don't remember? I made an attempt to try and remember, but failed. Come to think of it, I had been completely occupied with work these past 2 weeks. I must have forgotten our conversation as a result of that. There was also that thing with Takako, so I tried not to think too deeply about it. So, how's your vacation started already? You said you'd be here by next weekend, I believe. My vacation was supposed to start next weekend. There was no issues with my schedule. Yes. After we finished our conversation, I hung up. I sort of just went along with what Nane had said, but it seemed like the whole vacation problem had just solved itself. Well, there you go. I returned to my room and pulled out my travel bag from the closet. I opened a pamphlet in one of its inner pockets. As I flipped through a few pages, a piece of paper fell out of the thing. It had Nene's phone number and address written on it. I placed the piece of paper on the side table and sat down on my bed. Okay, here's the thing. She didn't even remember about Nane until, literally 2 days ago. And she had called a week ago? Does she have multiple personality disorder? Literally didn't remember that the lady existed until 2 days ago when she was under hypnosis. And it turns out that she had called them before she remembered them. There is something going on here. Something a lot deeper than we've seen. I placed the piece of paper on the side table and sat down on my bed. I felt like I'd been letting circumstances dictate my decisions for me as of late. I inhaled a deep breath and cleared my mind. After a brief pause, I considered what I should think about first. I recalled my encounter with Takako hallucination in the bathroom. It had been a while since I saw her naked. I wish that hallucination had stayed for a while longer. Narasaki's words suddenly reverberated in my mind. Everything has a reason. There was a reason why I misremembered the date of the trip and was confused about Takako's fate. According to Narasaki, it was most likely because I actually wanted to keep seeing Takako's hallucinations. The reason I thought Takako was still alive and knew Inukai was to make it so that my hallucinations in the office wouldn't clash too violently with my perceived reality. After thinking about it that way, it all made perfect sense. My own emotional frailty was the cause of it all. Either that or she feels responsible for Takako's death. So I guess Takako was actually, really dead. Tips 1, Narasaki Clinic, room 208 has been unlocked. Huh. Chapter 1, The Hospital in the Forest. That was the prologue? Click. After finishing breakfast, I returned to my hospital room and turned on the radio with the broken spring by forcing its switch a little. Good morning. It'll take a few more minutes for the sun to peek its face from the horizon. However, you can already see the clouds being illuminated by its golden light. Certainly a sight that's filled one's soul with energy, is it not? The radio began transmitting someone's cheerful voice through the usual noise. First, allow me to detail today's weather. Ishigaki is going to be exposed to east-southeast winds of level 3 strength. Meanwhile, the sky will be cloudy with 1,013 HPA barometric pressure and temperatures at 24 C. I moved to the plane room's window to confirm the weather of southern Japan. Why is this person... Takako is in a hospital. This is Takako. Her perspective. She's in a hospital. What's going on? The curtains parted with an energetic sound, and the gloomy room was instantly filled with a bright golden light. I considered the blue sky and azure sea beyond the window. I inhaled a deep breath, filling my chest with the pleasantly chilly morning air. Are you ready? Exercise number 1. Exercise directions began spilling forth from the radio. I straightened my stance, stuck out my chest, and stretched my back. Soon enough, I heard a knock on the door. I turned my head back as part of the exercise and saw Mayuko, my nurse. Wow, she has a strong resemblance to Sachi. Each time I turned, the light being reflected from her white uniform would blind me. I didn't miss the chance to marvel at her sizable bosom, though. Takako never change.
You seem to be in high spirits today. How are you feeling? I'm good. I think I've been doing pretty well these past couple of days.
Bending forward, I touched the floor with my palms. I could do better back in my teens, but my body was still far from stiff. With my hands on my waist, I bent backwards. It was just what my old rusty back needed. It felt great. I could see Mayuko upside down.
Regular exercise is well and good, but please don't try to overdo it.
Our eyes met.
Oh, this is nothing. It's not like I've got a physical condition. Well, I suppose that's true.
Mayuko, brushing the topic aside, placed the notebook she'd been holding on the side table.
I'll leave your new notebook here.
Glancing at the side table, I saw that the notebook in question was covered in brown leather. It was similarly designed to the one I was using before, but still had an odd sense of newness about it. I bent down, touching my left and right toes.
Oh, and after you're done exercising, I'd like you to make good on your promise from yesterday. Sure, just give me a sec.
Mayuko passed by me and sat down on my bed. Trying not to make too much commotion by jumping around, I instead kept moving up and down on my tiptoes while lifting my arms.
You could certainly keep at this up for a long time. I can't wake up unless I do this. Though to be honest, a morning bath would do the job even better. We're not running a hotel here. Well, that's why I gotta generate my own energy like this.
I stretched again, my unbrushed hair tickling my shoulders.
You have low blood pressure if I remember correctly.
Jealous? I'm a walking energy-saving machine.
Are you sure? Given the amount you eat, I'd say you have a faulty engine, if anything.
That's just how much I work. I heaved a deep sigh.
Well, let's make use of all that energy then.
Why is she in the hospital? Creak, creak. I looked inside the umbrella-shaped lamp on the ceiling, grasped the burned-out light bulb within, and turned it counterclockwise a few times. It let out a creaking sound.
Here you go!
I pulled the light bulb out of the socket and handed it to Mayuko, who was standing by the stepladder. She took it in her left hand while handling the new light bulb with her right.
Here.
Thanks! Or, I just realized the cursor is a different... Creak, creak. The cursor is different, but okay, it's green and pointing down when there's more text on this screen, and then it's blue and pointing right when there's text on the next screen. It has nothing to do with which character is talking. Got it. I pressed the new light bulb against the socket and turned it clockwise a couple times. After making sure it was steadily attached, I pulled my hand out of the glass umbrella and brushed the dust coating of my fingers on my thighs.
Okay, try turning on the lights now.
Mayuko let go of the stepladder and flipped the switch attached to the wall next to the entrance of the room. The room lit up. I had to narrow my eyes just to look up. The night keeper's room was filled by a dazzling orange light. I hopped off the stepladder.
Thank you very much.
Mayuko gave me a smile.
No problem.
I raised my hand in response.
Where to next?
I folded up the stepladder and gave Mayuko a look.
Next would be...
I shifted the ladder in my hand so it wouldn't hit my leg while Mayuko, standing next to me, opened the floor plan of the sanatorium. The main building was designed in the shape of a big U with a silent inner yard surrounded by 3 walls. The road from the inner yard led to another building that housed our library. It was also attached to the main building by a connecting corridor. Mayuko's floor plan was marked with several circles. She placed the paper on the open space of the flower stand, then pulled out a red pen from her chest pocket and added another circle for the break room.
Seems like only the library's left.
Aye aye, let's get a move on then. We left the break room and continued down the connecting corridor to the library. The corridor itself had windows on both sides, allowing the blinding sunlight to enter unobstructed. Mayuko was looking at the floor plan as she walked ahead of me.
Seems like we only have 3 places to take care of here.
I can't believe they're making patients do this.
You're tall and have endurance. We all appreciate your help, Miss Takako.
Mayuko chuckled to herself. I shifted the folded stepladder in my arms and glanced outside. I could see a couple of trees, their leaves partially shed, swaying gently in the wind.
I wanted to take care of this before the nights began to grow longer.
Mayuko was gazing outside the same window as me. Oh, don't sweat it. I got nothing to do lately, and I appreciate any opportunity to have a different kind of workout. I raised the stepladder to my shoulder while I was lifting weights. Mayuko responded with a chuckle. As she opened the door leading to the library, we found ourselves enveloped by the old smell of old paper and dust.
The closest one is the wall lamp next to the history bookshelf.
Gotcha! As we made our rounds to the library, changing all the weekend lights, I spotted a braided girl reading a book at one of the desks.
Aha! Knew I'd find you here, Sane.
The girl raised her face from the book to look at me. She fixed the position of her glasses with her index finger.
Takako?
Good afternoon, Miss Sane. Entering behind me, Mayuko spotted Sane as well and gave her a greeting.
Good afternoon,
Sane replied in a small voice.
Are you planning on reading here for a while?
Sane turned to me and made a barely perceptible nod.
My room was too bright for reading.
Sane fixed her position of her glasses again.
I'll return the books I borrowed later today.
All right. Her eyes behind the glasses lit up. I slightly raised the folded stepladder I had on my shoulder. I'm kind of doing my share of forced labor today.
Miss Takako, I would appreciate it if you refrained from that choice of words. You can't exactly call it forced when you volunteered yourself.
Mayuko furrowed her brows in mock indignation.
What about the labor part? I think that applies just fine. You are helping us all out, not to mention it helps your rehabilitation.
Still holding the bag of light bulbs, Mayuko crossed her arms. I didn't know it had anything to do with my rehabilitation.
It does. In any case, we should hurry and finish up already.
Mayuko pulled on the sleeve of my hand that supported most of the folded stepladder's weight. If I didn't want it to fall, I had no choice but to follow her.
See you later.
I waved Sane goodbye, and she answered me with a slight smile and a wave of her own. I pushed the fluorescent tube into its place on the ceiling and made sure to fasten it so it wouldn't fall on someone's head later. And with this, we're done! After confirming the light worked fine, I folded up the stepladder. Mayuko crossed out the last circle on the floor plan. She put the cap on her pen before returning it to her pocket.
Thank you very much for today.
Mayuko bowed her head in an expression of thanks.
Do you still have to work after this?
I heaved the folded stepladder on my shoulder so it wouldn't upset my balance.
I just have to make my rounds. In that case, I'll go back to Sane after I put this back.
I pointed at the stepladder. Mayuko picked up the paper bag with the old light bulbs in it.
Bring me some good sweets next time. I'll think about it.
I want a sponge cake.
Okay.
Rehabilitation for what? So I'm curious, is this... When does this happen? Is Takako not dead? Or is she dead and this was from the past? Or are there like two alternate realities? What the heck is going on? Sane, still on her bed, rummaged through the nearby shelf and pulled out a wooden plate with rice crackers on it. Oh.
Here, have some.
I picked up the one wrapped in seaweed and popped it into my mouth.
Thanks!
The seaweed already had a certain moistness to it, but the actual cracker was crunchy enough to feel fresh. Sane herself picked up a can from the shelf. After opening it, she scooped up some of the tea powder with a spoon, then added it to the boiling water in the pot. After hitting the spoon against the side of the can to return the residue powder, she closed its lid, returned it to the shelf, and filled the teacups with tea. The tea came just when I was starting to get thirsty from all the dry rice crackers.
Thanks.
I took the teacup from her and helped myself to a sip of the hot liquid. Sane's small room housed a bed, a cabinet, and the cane chair I brought from the recreation room. It was way smaller than my room, but still felt more spacious.
I've loved seaweed crackers all my life. The person who came up with combining seaweed and rice crackers must have been a genius. I like them too. I prefer sea crackers with sesame though.
Yeah, that one's pretty good too. You start off wanting to have only one or two, and soon enough you're left with an empty box. I reached out to grab the second cracker.
Are you perhaps hungry?
I stopped Sane as she was about to reach out towards the shelf again.
Nah, not really. But dinner here
is kind of bland, don't you think? I never really felt all that full afterwards.
Well, that's sort of a given. This is a sanatorium after all. Meals are made with the consideration for a balance of nutrients.
Yeah, wish they'd at least let me use my own seasoning. I need to look up sanatorium. An establishment for medical treatment of people who have a chronic illness or are convalescing. Recover one's health and strength after a period. Okay, well, it's a long-term hospital then. The dry wind clattered against the window next to the bed. Sane reached out and closed it, making the sound cease.
The wind has grown stronger lately.
Autumn is right around the corner.
That's true,
Sane answered. Then I glanced out the window, looking at a tree shedding its red and yellow leaves. A single leaf on one of its branches fluttered in the wind.
By the time the tree is fully stripped of leaves, the wind will calm down a bit. Temperatures will be lower too.
Is that how it works?
It happens every year.
Sane's eyes were still fixed on the window as she said that. How long have you been here?
I'm not sure anymore. I stopped counting after the first 5 years.
She turned back to me. Don't you get bored of being here?
I don't know. I don't usually think about stuff like that.
Really? Sane slowly nodded.
Really? Even if I tried thinking about it, all I remember are memories of living here. It's not like I could compare this place to any other.
I see. I glanced back at the lonely tree. A gust of wind made its sunset-colored leaves brush against the window glass. Further beyond that tree lay a forest that continued till the harbor. I could see some trees with colored leaves there as well.
How about you, Takako? Do you not get bored of this place? Well, living surrounded by nature on the top of a mountain has its upsides. The port town below is not exactly a bustling metropolis, but I like its retro feel. I also love how the wind here always has the scent of the sea to it. I looked at the port town beyond the window. It fell silent and lifeless in the distance, almost like a picture. It's pretty boring here during the winter. Well, I guess that's how winters are everywhere. I like reading books, so I have everything I want right here. Sane lifted a book from her knees. Yeah, this place sure has a lot of books. I glanced towards the direction of the library. Now that I think about it, I haven't been given the library key yet. If you have nothing to do during winter, why not try reading some books as well? I'm sure Miss Mayuko will lend you the keys if you ask. Nah, I'm good. I got plenty of reading just from the stuff you recommend. Now that I think about it, you don't have anything to read right now, do you? Do you want me to lend you a volume or two? Maybe not right now. I still have to write my diary. I crossed my legs again and pulled out a new notebook from my pocket. That's a new one, isn't it? I got it today. Have you already written in your diary today? On the side table next to Sane's bed rested a different notebook. Yes, I have. My diary entries mostly just consist of my opinions on books, though. At least you always have something to write about, I guess. Would you like to write in yours right now? You can use my table if you want. I stopped Sane right as she was about to climb out of the bed. I'll do it later. I've got stuff to write today, so it shouldn't take that long. I see. What are you reading right now, anyway? The book resting under Sane's hands had a marker stuck into it around the middle. Sane picked it up and showed me the cover. There was a bucket with a picture of a sci-fi looking city drawn on it. The letters above the bucket spelled out, SeaBed. SeaBed. It's a mystery novel. The protagonist and her lover visit a southern island and get stuck repeating the same day over and over again. I see, so it's like one of those loop stories I keep hearing about. There we go. Is it fun? It's fun so far. If it doesn't fall apart in the middle, I'll lend it to you before returning it to the library. I'll be looking forward to that. The southern islands are cool. You can't go anywhere right now, so it's nice to be able to make the journey in your head at least. Have you traveled before? Yeah, quite a bit actually. It's a long story, but do you want to hear it? Sane made a friendly smile. I'm okay, but what about your diary? I can always do it later. Besides, Mayuko said recounting my memories to other people helps with my condition. In that case, I'd definitely like to hear what you have to say. Sane left the book on the side table and turned to face me. I began to visualize one of my trips in my mind so I could tell her everything in great detail. I am confused. So is Takako dead or is she not? The sky on that day was the color of brand new jeans. Excellent metaphor. The wooden planks creaked under each of my steps. The main tourist attractions of this port town were above the sea. There were countless restaurants and souvenir stores lining the wooden deck. The wharf had seen its fair share of use over the years. Some of its planks left out unsettling creaks as people stepped on them. Surprised by the abrupt sound, I jumped back, almost crashing into a tall young man standing behind me. However, he managed to dodge me, his light blonde hair fluttering in the wind as he did. But by the time I regained my balance and was about to apologize, the man had already blended into the crowd of tourists, vanishing from sight. As I was trying to find the man again, Sachiko came over and told me she had spotted him by the crab signboard. Really? I looked in the direction she was pointing, and saw a large sign shaped like a ship's steering wheel. In its center, it had the picture of a massive crab. I hurried towards it. Sachiko followed. Don't move from here! I told Sachiko to wait while she was still busy admiring the sign, then turned around to look for someone who'd take a photo of us. Hey, photo! Could you take a photo of us, please?
I approached a well-built, middle-aged man wearing a sun cap and conveyed to him, mostly through gestures, that I wanted a picture. The man gave me a thumbs up. I hurried back to the signboard and lined up next to Sachiko.
Don't forget to smile!
I wrapped my arm around Sachiko's waist and pulled her closer.
Then say something funny. Say whiskey. Say whiskey!
The man pushed the shutter button while I was flustered.
A jumper cable walks into a bar.
Just as Sachiko narrowed her eyes, the instant print camera flashed and our picture was burned into the film. Holding the finished picture, the man hollered aloud, "Okay!" our way. Right at the very last moment before the flash, I spotted the tall young man standing behind us. After making a peace sign right in the middle of our picture, he gracefully drew away from us, melting into the crowd of tourists.
What was that? I think it was the man you almost crashed into earlier,
said Sachiko, looking in the direction the mysterious person disappeared in. The man wearing the sun cap returned to us, balling his hand into a fist to convey how great the picture turned out to be. Meanwhile, the floorboards continued to creak under his weight. As he reached us, he handed me the camera and the picture.
Thanks!
You're welcome! He patted me on the shoulder with enough force to almost dislocate it, then disappeared into the crowd. I flapped the picture a few times for the image to show up.
I see you made some new friends.
Sachiko addressed me as I let out a gasp of surprise. The picture showed a somewhat discontent Sachiko under the crab sign, and there I was next to her, making a confused face as I looked not at the camera, but the young man behind us. And it wasn't just the man that hijacked our picture. There was a whole group of people making weird faces and peace signs that I previously hadn't noticed at all. I'm one of those people, I don't lie. I love doing the peace signs and photobombing pictures. I love doing that.
I wonder if we came back a bit too early.
The ship we reserved to reach the island was nowhere in sight. I leaned against the wooden fence to catch my breath, making it creak. A gust of cold wind from behind ruffled my hair, caressing my cheeks as it drifted along towards the town.
Thirsty?
Yeah, a little. What's this? I spotted one of the tourists holding a transparent cup with some odd drink. The top of it was white while the bottom was black. On second thought, I could have sworn I'd seen that before.
I wonder if it's a Coke float. Is that what you want?
Sachiko narrowed her eyes and smiled.
I saw it being sold at the shop we just passed. Want me to treat you to one? You would? Thanks.
Aw, man, a root beer float. Sachiko turned on her heel, her long hair dancing in the wind, and continued down the road toward the nearby shops. The street was lined with brightly colored blue, red, and yellow buildings and sideboards. The clamor of shop owners calling everyone to take a look made that visual effect pale in comparison. Sachiko, clicking her heels against the hard asphalt, kept passing by and dodging the never-ending group of people going the opposite way. I shifted my gaze to the scenery of the town once she disappeared from my field of vision.
Huh.
The sight itself felt as though I was gazing at the direction of a grand opera. It was enough to make me heave a sigh of admiration. Beyond the vivacious shop district and up the slope, there rose countless buildings that boasted roofs of matching colors depending on the district. The road twisting up the hill and into the distance seemed as though it cleaved the entire port town in two. I wonder what town they're in. It connected to various other streets coiling around the slope of the hill. In the distance, I could see bean-sized cars popping up and out of the lush fir trees and tall buildings with rectangular windows. The tallest structures on both sides of the town seemed like dull office buildings, but hiding between them I could also spot a few more hotels with certain individuality. They boasted graceful Renaissance barge boards under their windows, as well as intricately designed Corinthian columns. This isn't Rome, is it? The few mansions in front of them seem to have been built using Victorian architecture, with arched entranceways and tower roofs. I felt almost like a rabbit could come darting out of them at any moment. A good number of trees towered among the buildings, giving the powerful townscape a somewhat relaxing feel, like pieces of broccoli lining a lunchbox. The various old buildings from before the Industrial Revolution, mixing in with those utilizing a more modern type of architecture, gave the town the look of a colossal toy box. There were even a number of ancient-looking cable cars running along its chaotically designed roads. Is this San Francisco? My eyes grew tired as I tried making out where the cable car was going. I shook my head and closed my eyes. I could hear the sound of waves among the noisy bustle of the town. A ship horn sounded somewhere in the distance behind me. A gust of cold wind whizzed past my ears, making the flags in front of the shop flutter, then rustling the trees as it continued rising up the hill. I felt like I could hear the buzzing of engines and cable cars, even the spinning of wheels from the distant road I'd been observing. I listened in, imagining that the cacophony of all those sounds was the breathing of the town as one giant living organism. Eventually, in the chaos of those noises, I made out the stable rhythm of a sound I was familiar with. I listened more closely, concentrating on that one sound alone. That's Sachi coming with something. It was the sound of heels clicking against a hard surface.
Here, I brought you what you wanted.
Thanks! As I opened my eyes, still facing down, a pair of shapely legs entered my sight. As I raised my face, I nearly collided with the black and white drink from before. I took the cup from Sachiko's hands. It looked like coffee with some cream on top.
Yep, that's the one I saw. It's called Irish coffee, apparently.
Sachiko didn't have anything besides the cup she handed me.
You're not drinking anything? I'm not really thirsty. Then I guess I'll help myself to this.
I brought the glass cup to my mouth and tilted it. The first thing I felt was the cream, which was nowhere near as sweet as I had anticipated. If anything, it had a fairly mellow taste. Then came the coffee, spreading all across my tongue. As I finally took a big gulp, something suddenly burned my throat.
Ugh!
A small amount spilled out the side of my mouth, but I thankfully managed to regain enough composure not to spit it out like a fountain.
That was whiskey! Yes, it seems like they mixed it in with coffee for this drink.
Chuckling, Sachiko pulled out a plastic bottle with water from her handbag and handed it to me. I heard the horn of the ship resound again. Drinking my water straight from the bottle, I turned around and saw the ship. Aw, she's pretty. The ferry wasn't rocking too intensely on the water. I leaned over the railings and saw the ship's propellers making white foam waves below us. Each time the ship rode a high wave and sank back down, there'd be a big splash. The crisp, somewhat moist sea breeze gently cooled my cheeks.
You didn't need to drink it all.
I forgot all about the ship for a while there, but I'm okay.
The wind feels really nice here.
Sachiko was looking at the sky. I shifted my position on the railings, putting the back of my head against them, and followed suit in gazing up into the sky. There was a flock of seagulls flying above us. I followed them with my gaze, noticing that the port town we just left had already been enveloped by fog. Sounds like San Francisco to me. All I could make out were the gray silhouettes of tall buildings looming on the slope. I turned toward the front of the ship and spotted the island we were going to. It was visible from the port as well, but after getting closer, I also made out a lighthouse, as well as a rectangular white building that looked like it could have been a school. Large trees covered the eastern side of the island, hiding from view whatever else was there. This does not sound like San Francisco. The western side consisted of a large cliff of white rock.
It's more beautiful than I thought.
Sachiko was looking in the same direction.
If I didn't know any better, I would have guessed it was anything but...
This is San Francisco, that's Alcatraz.
I would have guessed it was anything but a prison.
The island used to be a prison for isolating highly dangerous criminals. I called it. The cable cars, the fog, I called it. San Francisco. The place gained fame as an impossible-to-escape institution, making its way to countless movies and novels. Clank. One of the tourists tried his strength against the iron bars. The first building we visited consisted mostly of one long room with a tall ceiling and 3 rows of solitary cells on both sides. All the cells were small rectangles with white iron bars serving as doors. Plain concrete stairs with iron railings led to the upper floors. The room was so massive I felt like this road with cells would never end. I peeked into one of the cells and saw a bed, a water basin, and a toilet. I also spotted a picture frame and a magazine lying on the floor. Turning around, I looked at the other end of the passage. The countless parallel bars stretching on in my field of view overwhelmed me with feelings of seclusion and order. The path split into 2 once it reached the wall at the end, leading left and right. I could see light seeping in through the open doors. The rectangular patch of light on the floor looked like another door. As I was staring at the light, a dark-haired woman passed by me. Sachiko, looking into the cells on the other side, reached the end of the tunnel, took a turn, then vanished from sight.
Wait!
I hurried after her. I ran up the concrete stairs. Once I reached the landing, I changed direction.
By the way, did you know that the Japanese word for stair landings references dancing? Because that's kind of what you look like when you turn? When I was younger, I really thought it was a place where people danced.
But isn't it the same word used for stair landings where you don't need to turn?
You have a point.
Why did you suddenly bring that up anyway?
I don't know, it just popped into my mind. We've only been seeing foreigners and Western stuff as of late, so I guess I felt a little nostalgic for Japan.
Stair landings came to us from the West, though.
Really?
Speaking of which, this reminds me of the time we played tag at our apartment complex. You jumped out the window at the 2nd floor landing and twisted your ankle.
My ankle hasn't been the same since. Every time I turn up my foot, it still creaks a bit. But man, you sure remember all that ancient history.
Well, it was shocking enough to leave a lasting impression. I thought you were dumb for running into a dead end on those stairs. But I underestimated your stupidity. What kind of idiot would jump out a 2nd floor window during a game of tag?
I was so pumped up I didn't even think about the consequences. I mean, this is just the kind of stuff kids do, you know?
Not me, that's for sure. As we finished climbing the stairs, Sachiko peeked into the cell to her left. I think this is the one. She urged me on with a glance.
Yeah.
There was a dummy shaped like a man lying on the bed, no doubt to trick the guards. Further into the cell, we spotted an air vent and a poster partially hiding a hole in the wall.
Wow.
An inescapable prison, they once called the place, yet there were indeed a few who managed to dig their way out with nothing but a handful of spoons, and they never found the bodies.
That hole is much smaller than I thought.
I patted Sachiko on the shoulder. She chuckled as she saw me imitating a guard inspecting the dummy with a flashlight. We continued down the main street of the building, walking shoulder to shoulder. Looking into the cells next to me, I spotted a blue canvas and some painting tools in one, a mountain of magazines and Bible pages scattered on the floor of another. It felt like each cell reflected the personality of its former owner. Some of the inhabitants seemed to have tried to utilize the small space they had by changing the positions of their beds or attaching shelves to the walls. The sight of what was most likely handcrafted furniture stood as a visible memento of the many years these people must have spent here.
It doesn't look too bad.
Sachiko abruptly spoke up. I considered her face.
You get food every day, you're allowed to exercise to stay in shape, and you can spend all your time reading books.
I feel lightheaded at the very thought of being locked up in such a cramped place.
It doesn't matter where you are. The important part is what you do.
I wonder if that's what Takiko's thinking being in this hospital. You'd grow bored of reading if that was the only thing to do every day.
Doesn't that also apply to the outside world?
At least on the outside, you're not alone. That makes it better.
I guess so.
Sachiko gave the handle leading to the showers a careful look. I lined up next to her and gave her face a careful look instead. Then I imitated taking a shower while Sachiko quoted a line from a movie. We'd been together long enough to not need words to communicate. I felt happy about that.
You could see the sea from here.
Sachiko, walking in front, turned her head back at me and pointed ahead. The viewing deck from which we could see the sea looked like it could belong to a ship. Standing on it were a couple of giggling young girls enjoying their shopping. There was also a young man. He sat in focused silence, painting a picture. And there was a biker admiring the sea from the seat of his motorcycle, a tanned man with dreadlocks dancing to reggae music, a woman sitting at the edge of the pier writing poetry, an old couple simply gazing out at the sea. There were all sorts of people, each of them freely enjoying the sight of the sun gradually sinking below the horizon. Noticing that it was growing dark, I stood up from my chair and flipped on the light switch. Sane filled our empty cups with freshly made tea.
You didn't run into any ghosts and such?
I took a sip from the steaming hot tea as Sane asked that question.
I don't believe in stuff like that. Honestly, if any place had them, it would be there. I mean, we're talking about the ruins of an old prison.
You think so?
Yes. Now that I think about it, weren't there some famous ruins on this island too? Really?
Sane's expression clouded over as I directed my gaze beyond the window.
I like ruins. It's pretty cool to know there used to be something magnificent right where you're standing. You feel like you've glimpsed something from the lives of people you've never met. Even if someone died there and you're seeing their ghost? Is there even a place on Earth that hasn't seen death? I mean, I'm sure someone died in this very spot over the course of 1,000,000 years. I bet they even waged a war or two around here. I bet it'd be much harder to find a place with no potential spirits wandering around. I see your point, but don't ruins make you feel somewhat uncomfortable? Like you've said, they make you imagine all these things that were lost. I think it depends on your perspective. That doesn't scare me, at least. I suppose you're right. If anything, I'm much more scared of not knowing. Isn't that just your usual curiosity at work? Maybe. I've traveled all over the world, after all. Traveling sounds like fun. Have you ever wanted to travel, Sane?
Sane stopped her nod midway and cocked her head in thought. The twigs of a broad-leaved tree shivered beyond the window. The wind continued to howl. It almost felt like the scent of the sea drifted across the room.
I think I'd be too scared to go to an unknown place. I'd probably want someone like you to accompany me.
Yeah, and I'd be too worried to let you go out all on your own.
If it's okay with you, I wouldn't mind tagging along. You're used to traveling, so I definitely feel safer with you around. Won't argue with that. I could take you all around the world.
The broad smile I made caused Sane's lips to curl up as well, albeit only slightly. But she soon returned to normal.
I do not mean to intrude, but, why did you break up with that Sachiko person?
Break up? No matter how hard I thought about it, I simply couldn't remember. This episode raised more questions than it answered!
If it's okay... it's okay if you don't want to talk about it.
Sane's voice brought me back to reality.
Nah, I was just thinking. It's not like I don't want to talk about it. It's just that I can't really remember. Oh, do you think it's part of your condition?
Probably. Certain things were missing from my memories. And when I tried to think about them too much, I'd start losing my grip on reality. In that state, despite being conscious, I wouldn't be able to see things right in front of me, and all sounds would feel distant, barely audible even. It felt like walking through a long, dark tunnel with no lights. With only the boundless darkness in front of me, I'd start losing track of whether I was moving ahead, standing in place, or actually going backwards. The sensation would only last a few moments, though. A sound similar to that of a grandfather clock striking the hours would suddenly make me realize I'd fallen awkwardly silent in the middle of a conversation.
Look at the time! Mayuko's gonna be here making her rounds any minute now. Seems that way.
I think I'll be going then. I don't want her to get angry at me for making you stay up all night. It's about time you went to sleep, right?
It is, yes.
Sane picked up the book she'd left on her bedside and returned it to the shelf.
Good night.
I stood up and returned the cane chair to its former position.
Do you have any plans for tomorrow, Takako?
Not sure. I'll go to the night duty room after this and ask Mayuko about it. Do you have anything planned, Sane?
Our library's open to the public on weekends, so I'll be there till noon.
This has been on my mind since I'd first heard about it, but do people really ever come here?
We have a few visitors from the outside, but there have been a number of people that came looking for old books.
Can't blame them. There's no older building than this on the entire island. Merely remembering the amount of dust I discovered on the shades made my throat hurt.
We had a few guests from the Western Ward, too.
Right, they don't have a library in that building, do they?
That's right.
I tried remembering how that place looked, but couldn't. Anyway, I'll drop by again sometime.
Okay. Good night.
I left the room as Sane lay down on the bed. Okay, that's a perfect stopping point. I am mega confused. Is Takako dead or not? I guess we're going to have to wait a very long time to find out. Because everything we've had up until now, like literally only about an hour ago, has been the prologue. We have now started chapter 1. All I could say for sure... Good lord, I can't say anything for sure. Clearly, Takako's in a hospital. She had a funeral of some kind. I am confused, and I think the game's doing this to me on purpose. And you know what the worst part is? I won't be back next week to continue. I won't be back until 2 weeks from now to continue this, because next week I'm going to be in Las Vegas, so... Yeah, you guys are going to have to come back 2 weeks from now on Sunday, the 26th of February in order to find out what is going on. Oh, man. Looking forward to that, though. So, that'll bring this stream to an end. Shout out to the lurkers. I'll be back on Tuesday where I will be starting Pocket Witch. Should be fun. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. This has been SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. Have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.